Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach, and today we're going to have a look at the rookies for round one. Of course, last night Richmond and the Blues played off, and there are a few solid rookie options in that game that obviously we can't select at the moment, but the finalised teams are out aside from the ones on Monday, but there's been high demand for a bit of a rookie podcast, so I thought I'd get stuck into that and release it on the Friday night. Of course, it's a pretty busy time when people are finalising their teams, and we'll get stuck into it tomorrow when the real lockouts really start to happen and we want to have our teams fit and firing, ready for the whole season. So, look, I've got about 15 or 20 names for you as far as rookies go. We'll start with the back line. Of course, Wiedering was the man a lot of people would have had last night, and they would have been pretty happy with him scoring about 85. And look, that was a pretty good pick, not only for him scoring well, but in the way it's turned out, there haven't been a great deal of backline options for us. Broad not named, nor was Hartley for the Bombers. Mitch Brown and Tipping Woody were. They're absolute locks. Whether you have them in the backline or the forward line is up to you. Tom Lee wasn't named. Marcus Adams was for the Dogs, named at centre-half back there, so he looks like a handy option. But look, it's basically Adams, Brown, Tipping Woody. Everyone's going to have them, let's be honest. If not for a lack of options, really. And I think Wiedering would have a lot of people's D5. So if you don't have Wiedering, though, that potentially leaves you perhaps a man down in that defence, or at least someone playing. So, look, Oscar McDonald is one that's at 155k for the Demons. He was named on the field at centre-half back, which suggests while I don't read too much into team lineups, it does suggest he's cementing himself into that back six fairly strongly. So, do a bit of research into him if you like him. I know he's 30k extra than what we might like to pay for a rookie guy. I would doubt he'd be a high scoring option, but a lot of the backline players and rookies in general, it's hard to really predict their scoring potential aside from the real gun rookies or experienced players. So that's a look at the back line. I'd look into McDonald, but as far as the others, those three guys I mentioned are locks, and you might want to be persistent with Hartley, but he should get an opportunity at some stage throughout the year, but disappointing he wasn't named round one. In the midfield, of course, Ryan Davis got the upgrade. He's a lock. Mills, a lock, surely, named as well on the wing there. Clayton Oliver, named round one, should be a great option. But we'll discuss some of the other options that maybe make you think. So, Menninger would have been a lot of sides last night. He was a pretty decent pick, I would imagine. Scored, I think, 75, 80-ish, so a good pick there. Christian Petrarca, we don't always want to start guys that aren't going to play round one, but he's the exception. I think he was best on ground in the intra-club match today, so you've got to surely pick him, I think. He won't play round one, but he'll be playing in the early rounds, and he's one of the most appealing rookie price players we have to pick from this year. George Hewitt for the Swans. There's a couple of Swans that have sort of come out of nowhere and really lifted themselves onto our radars, and George Hewitt is one of them. He's named on the bench there, so look, he's going to be in the mix, I feel, with a lot of other sort of fringe Sydney players. But he does have the runs on the board in NEFL level. I know a lot of people dominate NEFL level, and you get a lot of misleading stats out of that league, but he has dominated it, racks up plenty of possessions, clearances, he does it very well, everything that should surely translate into AFL form. He's got a pretty well-rounded and balanced game, and look, his name round one, he must be considered alongside the likes, or just on Hewitt and Papley when I get to him. McVeigh and McGlynn are probably guys to come back in. McGlynn may be a while away. McVeigh, of course, in the early stages. So perhaps one of those guys may make way for McVeigh. But look, at this point in time, as I've said, our options aren't bouncing off the walls for us. Gresham is another one, named for the Saints, top-end pick. You'll have to pay a little extra for him, but I think he's going to play quite a few games. As I say, whether he plays more forward pocket, gets a rotation in the midfield, I don't know. It's hard to predict how he'll score. Dunkley for the Dogs had a reasonable NAB challenge and it's got himself a round one berth. There is a lot of guys that could fill his spot though for the Dogs. He's done well to get that round one spot, I must say, but the likes of Rovat and Lin Jong are going to be knocking on the door for some time, and I'm thinking about Dunkley, but I don't know if I'll pick him. I mean, he's not a bad option, but a good player, I think. Pretty tough and ready for his age, but he's got a lot of competition for other young dogs coming up for that sort of spot. So, bit of a midfield wrap there. There's a few options, not stacks, but there's enough to work with. In the ruck, there's nothing to work with, let's be honest. Grimley was named as an emergency, and no Curry, no Cox, not much at all. So I'd strongly suggest you just pick a bottom-end player make extra 15k or whatever it might be. And look, if you've got no options, you may as well make some cash. So looking into the forward line though, we've got Lincoln McCarthy named. I doubt his scoring potential. I know the Cats pretty well, and he's not going to play much midfield at all. He'll be a pinch hitting small forward. He tackles hard and he's opportunistic, but I couldn't see too many high scores. But he is playing. We don't have a lot of guys that are playing in that sort of 110 to 140 sort of price range, so definitely consider him. Mitch McGovern, I must admit I don't know a lot about him from the Crows. He was a bit of a surprise packet to be named, I believe. Athletic forward, 191 centimetres. Again, I'd say he's got a fair bit of competition because the Crows do have quite a bit running through that forward line, in particular of the tall variety. So he's got the round one berth, so I guess he's ahead of others, but whether he has good job security, I'm not sure. Tom Papley from the Swans, as I was talking about, he's just a small fella, 178 centimetres and 74 kilos. He's a small forward, a bit in the line of McCarthy as far as positions he'll play. It's tough to pick his job security as well. I don't see it as fantastic, but as I mentioned with McGovern, they're in the team round one. It's their spot to lose. So you got to take that in consideration rather than picking a guy who isn't playing. Even if you know him, rate him a little higher, the club may not, and you might have a guy who's just a sitting donut for a while. When we have that floating donut in our rucks anyway, you don't want to be carrying too many zeros. And look, these players are named. Okay, is their job security 100%? Probably not, but they are holding out guys at the moment, so that's something to consider for sure. Sam Kerridge, of course, played last night and was unbelievable. He was very good, looks like a strong player in the Carlton lineup, and well, everyone had him. He's a lock, let's be honest. Nick Comer wasn't named for the Bombers. He's an emergency. Well, I'm thinking about him, I must say. That's look, they're all the players I had as far as names. I'll just leave you with this sort of topic to discuss and think about. Whether you pick a guy who isn't playing, but you think he's going to play and is a better option than the guy's named round one. Comer is a great option like that. Yes, I know his body is poor, but he had reasonable NAB challenge form. He's played AFL footy before. If you verse him against sort of your forward pocket, Tom Papley, he's going to be out of his weight division to an extent. Could Comer could he get a game round 2, round 3? All of a sudden Papley struggled to adapt to, AFL footy and he's dropped, and all of a sudden you've got a guy who, he's made you 30, 40k, but he's on the fringe, playing knee full, and then you've got Comer, okay, you haven't got that immediate cash, which is important, but he could cement himself in the lineup. So it's a very interesting one. Dean Turlick was a guy that you could draw that comparison to a few years back. Wasn't named round 1. Most people were confident in him. Wasn't named round 1. People jumped off him. He played round 2, and he turned out to be an extremely good pick. As I say, strongly bear in mind the fact that these guys are named round 1. They're in the best 22, so they are, in the coach's eyes, in the best 22 and ahead of the others on the list. But if they're fringe players, you've got to consider that. So definitely look around. I wouldn't want to have too many players that aren't playing on your bench. Try and generate as much early cash. We will have Petrarca as a 0. I would only really endorse maybe one more. If you've got confidence in a Comer or a Hartley or a Broad as well getting games, then definitely consider that, and you might take that risk. Always, as soon as you're looking at rookies, also have the tab open in the injury list, because just because they're named doesn't mean they got in the best 22 off their own form. Their form's obviously good, but they could be just filling the void for someone who's out injured for just a week or so, or 3 weeks, and they won't hold their spot long. So taking it all into consideration, that's a rookie wrap. Tell me if I've missed anyone, of course. I may well have. I think that's a fairly good coverage, but it's exciting to get round 1 underway, and this is a real final piece of the puzzle for our teams. I must stress that the Monday teams haven't been fully finalised. Blake Hardwick's another name that just comes to me as well for the Hawks. I didn't mention him before because he's probably going to be named emergency, but if he is named, you would consider him. But certainly do a thorough look over, finalise our teams, and good luck for the year.